Hi, everyone. Welcome again to AuthorStory. I'm Alexander Lim, your host. And for this episode, I'm interviewing Nancy Van Dyken, author of the book Everyday Narcissism Yours, Mine, and Ours. And if any of you guys are interested, please feel free to go right ahead to the Amazon link in the description below the video and check out a copy of her book. So, Nancy, welcome to AuthorStory. Thanks for being our guest.
Yes, thanks for having me on, Alex.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, Nancy, for starters, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself? What's your author story?
Yes, I'm a licensed psychologist and licensed independent clinical social worker, and I've been practicing for going on 35 years.
Wow. Okay.
Uh, and so I've been doing this for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I have specialized in working in relationship issues of all kinds in relationship to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And a specialty is also working with people in abusive dynamics,
Mm-hmm.
psychological, emotional, physical abuse.
Right. So, next the book. Can you tell us what the book's all about and who it's for?
Well, the book is for people like you and me and your listeners. It's for pretty much for everybody, um, and that's why I call it Everyday Narcissism. It's based on 5 core beliefs that we are taught under the age of 5.
Huh?
And these beliefs drive our behaviors, emotions, and thoughts for the rest of our lives.
Hmm.
And they're reinforced daily everywhere as we grow, be it the school, the neighborhood, family members, friends.
Mm-hmm.
And these 5 beliefs create a lot of pain and hardship for us. And we don't even know how they're impacting us. We're not even aware of the lies that we've been taught, but that are forming our way of looking at the world. And the good news is the wounds that are created by these myths or these lies can be healed. And people can go on to live a life of feeling much freer and much happier and much calmer.
Hmm. Right. Sounds interesting. So, Nancy, first off, what made you decide to write this book? I mean, like, was there an aha moment when you realized I should write this thing, or was it more like a growing realization as time went on?
Well, it was the latter.
Okay.
I
Okay.
used to do I used to do some speaking on codependency,
Mm-hmm.
because I think I had a PhD myself by the time I was 15
Mm-hmm.
in codependency.
Right.
So, as clinicians, I believe a good clinician is always healing herself or himself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started talking about narcissism relative to codependency about 10 years ago.
Okay.
And the thoughts just kept emerging. And what I do in practice, Alex, is I look for patterns that people get into.
Mm-hmm.
And what are the patterns that are working, and what are the patterns that are causing problems and pain?
Mm-hmm.
And so I discovered these patterns over the years, and certainly recognized them in myself as I was growing up. And thus the book came about.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Decided mostly because I didn't want to keep having to teach all this to my clients, and I have a
Right.
better job giving them a book.
Right. Have them read it, and they'll get more information from it that way. Then.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, got that. So let's get down to brass tacks here. What exactly is narcissism? I mean, what's the definition of narcissism?
Well, this is on a spectrum. You have the personality disorder narcissism,
Uh-huh.
which people are assigning to people they know or don't know but see on TV
Mm-hmm.
quite easily.
Mm-hmm.
And that type of narcissism is a much more severe form. It's where people are very self centered, they need to be right, they get angry quickly,
Right.
they don't like people to disagree with them. But everyday narcissism is on the opposite end of that,
Hmm.
where people are more into being pleasers, wanting to get approval, doing things to try and be liked, always fearing rejection.
Mm-hmm.
And so everyday narcissism is more of a garden variety form.
Hmm.
Most of us struggle with based on those 5 core beliefs or myths.
Okay, that's interesting because I have this impression of narcissism as being, me, I. But when you speak of everyday narcissism, it seems sort of like, I don't know, sort of like emptying yourself for the benefit of others, something like that. Did I get it correct?
That's correct. So the first myth in everyday narcissism is um, I'm responsible for and have the power to control how other people feel and behave.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a 5-year-old, and in my family, we'll say it's me, Nancy.
Okay.
The family always hugs and kisses relatives goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
So mom says to Nancy, Nancy, go give grandma a hug and kiss goodbye because she's leaving now.
Mm.
Nancy says, I don't want to. Grandma just said something really mean to me and I don't want to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And mother, in a little bit of an irritated tone, says, now, Nancy, go give her a hug and kiss goodbye or she'll feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Nancy's 5.
Right.
Myth 1 says, I'm responsible for how other people feel and behave.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to go take care of grandma's feelings. She's 65 and I'm 5,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm to go take care of grandma.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, by the way, if I don't take care of grandma and give her a hug and kiss goodbye, mother's going to be angry and upset with me. So
Mm-hmm.
now I control mother's anger.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, I'm 5.
Right.
And dad will get upset if mom is upset. So
Uh-huh.
now, 5-year-old, I'm responsible for and have the power to control how all these adults feel.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I call that a role reversal in my business.
Mm-hmm.
I'm being more of the parent than the parents parenting me.
Mm-hmm.
Myth 3 is your needs are more important than mine. So, what happens to Nancy at that moment is it doesn't matter how she feels. The
Right.
only thing that matters is how mom, dad, and grandma feel, and she's supposed to take care of her.
Mm-hmm.
So when you keep telling your child, well, it doesn't matter how you feel about it, go do this, it's like a paper cut. And paper cuts hurt. If you've ever had one, and most of us have,
Yeah, yeah, that hurts like crazy.
yeah, it's a paper cut. And then you hear it again. Now, Nancy, can you change your skirt? You look so much nicer in the other one.
Mm-hmm.
And Nancy put on her favorite skirt,
Mm-hmm.
but she knows she has to change her skirt or mom will be mad, she'll pout, dad will get upset, and again, Nancy's only 8.
Mm-hmm.
Another paper cut and another paper cut. And eventually I call this hazy trauma.
Okay.
It's not like the trauma of being hit or sexually abused, which we know is wrong.
Right.
This kind of hazy trauma is totally acceptable in our society.
Mm-hmm.
And to take care of all these other people. We think we're teaching our children to be sensitive,
Mm-hmm.
but what we're doing is teaching our children that how they feel and what they need and what they want, it just doesn't matter.
Mm. Okay. So it occurs to me then that everyday narcissism is, the argument of nature versus nurture. This comes across to me as being something that's really based in nurture more than anything else.
Absolutely. And all parents are trying to do the best job they can.
Mm-hmm.
Almost all parents really are just trying to do, and they're just doing what was done to them.
Okay.
So I was on a radio show the other day and I was saying one of the things that's really hurtful to children is to say, I'm so disappointed in you.
Mm-hmm.
So what that means then is it's my job to make sure that my dad isn't disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in control of that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, dad's in control of that, but we're taught. And one of the listeners got on the line and he said, I totally disagree with you.
Uh-huh.
My children misbehaved. And when we got back, I told him I was really disappointed in them.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to say, when you tell that to a child, you're really shaming them.
Mm-hmm.
Children so badly want to be adored.
Mm-hmm.
And to say you're a disappointment is so hurtful. And the listener said, well, my parents used that on me and told me that they were disappointed me and it worked, and so I'm using it on my children and I think it's just fine.
Mm-hmm.
You see, we only pass on what we've been taught.
Right.
There aren't any good or bad parents. It's just time that we start to break the cycle of everyday narcissism. Like we're trying to break the cycle of abuse and incest.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to break the cycle of EN,
Mm-hmm.
everyday
Okay.
narcissism.
All right. Well, narcissism. So, a lot of things in our lives are useful to us. Even traumas. They come. It occurs to me that traumas spring for a desire to protect ourselves. Does narcissism play any, I don't know, for lack of a better word, good thing in our lives?
No, because narcissism is created by being injured.
Mm-hmm.
So the more narcissistic someone is, the more they were injured in childhood,
Mm-hmm.
the greater the injury. So I don't believe any form of narcissism is helpful because it comes from a place of wounding.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So really, this is like something that's totally negative, no positive benefits. Then,
Well, that depends on your choice.
okay.
You like anything in life, you can choose to heal it
Mm-hmm.
and grow from it and learn from it,
Mm-hmm.
which will certainly expand you and benefit you.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can be controlled by those five myths.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth myth is rules are more important than I am.
Okay.
So I had a woman in here the other day who said her husband would like to go into therapy,
Mm-hmm.
but he doesn't think that as a man that therapy really is a very manly thing to do. Well,
Okay.
that would be a social rule. So
Okay.
my need to get some help isn't as important as following that social rule.
Mm. All
The
right.
fifth the fifth myth is I've got to follow all these myths
Mm-hmm.
or I'm not lovable. I'm not likable. And
Mm.
our main drive in life, Alex, is to belong. We
Right.
want to fit. We want to be liked. We want to be part of a community. We
Right.
want someone to adore us.
Right.
So if I have to put my needs last, if I have to take care of your emotional needs to be accepted and adored, I'm going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And
All
so we learn not to count ourselves.
right. Right. Okay. So it occurs to me then. This conversation is very prevalent. So it occurs to me that, I mean, just thinking about it, I'm sort of like a follow the rules kind of guy. So definitely I can see that in my life. So I guess this is present in a lot of people then, if not everyone.
Well, as my clients start learning about it, reading the book, discussing it, doing the healing activities,
Hmm.
a common phrase is, Nancy, I see it everywhere. It's everywhere. And I say, yes, it is prevalent. It is everywhere. A young man, as a teacher, came in and he had read the first 3 or 4 chapters of my book, which really outlined the myths.
Right?
And he said, Nancy, I saw it everywhere. It's in my school.
Uh-huh.
I said, well, what did you see? Well, I saw a child come in
Hmm.
and go up to his teacher and say, I didn't get my homework, Mrs. John. I didn't get it done, Mrs. Johnson.
Okay.
And Mrs. Johnson said, oh, I'm so disappointed in you.
Uh-huh.
Very mean. So the child has now been assigned the responsibility of causing disappointment in his teacher.
Hmm.
That's a very powerful misnomer. I mean, it's not true, but that statement leaves the child feeling like he is responsible for his teacher being disappointed.
Hmm.
So when this child came to his room and said, I need to tell you too that I didn't get my math done today.
Hmm.
Having read the book, the teacher said, well, John, I'm concerned about that because today we're going to learn something new in math. And if you don't know how to do yesterday's work, you're going to have a really hard time today.
Hmm.
So let's find out what got in your way of doing the homework and seeing what we can do to make sure you make up for it.
Hmm.
Do you hear the difference in the message?
Yeah, yeah, I do. Like the second one is like, we've got to move on. It's not like making the kid wrong or making the kid, as you say, responsible for the teachers being disappointed.
Right, right. That kid not doing the homework has nothing to do with the teacher. The
Right.
teacher tweeted about her,
Uh-huh.
but it had to do with maybe he went home hungry. Maybe his mom and dad had a big fight.
Hmm.
Maybe the police came to the house.
Right.
Maybe he got, we don't know how come he didn't get his homework done.
Right.
But we're already blaming him for controlling her emotions.
Right. Right. So
So, oh, go ahead.
go ahead, please.
Well, somebody asked me on the show then, if your 5-year-old doesn't want to give grandma a kiss goodbye, what do you do? And I said, well, instead of saying you need to kiss her or she'll be hurt, what you
Hmm.
say is, well, in our house, honey, it's very important to be respectful.
Hmm.
So I want to hear later about how your feelings were hurt by grandma, but
Hmm.
for now, you need to go up and say goodbye to her.
Hmm.
You don't have to hug her and kiss her. This is your body. You get to control your own body.
Right.
But you need to go up out of respect. You need to go up and say goodbye, grandma.
Oh.
You see, when that happens to women in particular, and we're seeing it in the United States right now with all the sexual harassment stuff,
Hmm.
that girls in particular learn that their body doesn't belong to them.
Hmm.
And so when the sexual harassment occurs, they don't like it, but they don't speak up about it because, after all, I haven't been able to control what goes on in my body since I was a little kid.
Right. Right. Okay, well, you just brought out a couple of points because one of the things that came to mind was that, these conversations, they're essentially used to try, I mean, the intention is good to try to teach relationships and how to interact in a social environment, but
Exactly.
it doesn't turn out that way because of the message that the kid is responsible for the adult's way of being.
Yep.
Yeah, and yeah, so how is you may have mentioned touched on this before earlier, but what would be a reasonably good alternative method to to teach kids respect and how to interact socially?
Well, I think what people don't understand is when you're teaching a child those 5 lies,
Right?
what you're teaching them is to not respect themselves.
Uh-huh.
So um, I always think it's important that we be honest and direct, but we do so with kindness and graciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a chapter in my book, for instance, it's called Lying to Survive.
Mm-hmm.
So we learn to lie um, in order to feel loved and
Mm-hmm.
and and to belong. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's a survival thing. And so when my daughter was 2.5,
Mm-hmm.
and we were out to eat at a good friend's house who was 80 some years old,
All right.
the only thing that was on the table was a hot dish.
Okay.
And I was delighted. I didn't have to shop for it. I didn't have to buy it. I didn't have to cook it. And the hot dish came around to my daughter and she said, "Ick."
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah,
give
yeah,
you
yeah. Yeah,
ick.
yeah.
I hate cheese and broccoli.
Right, right.
So I turned to my mom's good friend and I said, "Dorothy, will you excuse me for a minute, please? Kelsey, will you come with me?" And of course, the women were in their 70s and 80s, so they had a
Mm-hmm.
smile on their face.
Right, right.
So we walked off, and I'm thinking, now what am I going to say to my daughter? Because I don't want to teach her to lie.
Right.
So I said to her, "Honey, it's okay if you don't like what someone makes you for dinner. That's perfectly okay. However, what you said isn't kind
Mm-hmm.
and respectful. And if you don't like the broccoli and the cheese, then just take out of the hot dish what you do like.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're still hungry after we're done eating, come to mommy and tell me, and I will tell you, I will make you a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or something like that."
Right.
And then when we leave, you don't want to thank her for the lovely meal because if she invites us over, she's going to cook it for you again because she thinks you like it. And
Right,
it's not
right.
honest. and it's not respectful.
Uh,
But what you can graciously say is, thank you so much for having us over, Dorothy. It was very nice to see you and so kind of you to fix dinner for us.
mhm,
See, that's all honest. It's all respectful, but there isn't one lie in it. But
mhm.
we are taught to lie and to thank people for that ugly sweater they just bought us, or
Yeah,
for the toy we never wanted.
right.
And instead, we can thank them for buying us a gift and shopping for us, and it means a lot for us without ever lying.
Mhm, right. You know that example. It's sort of like it occurs to me as being a more roundabout way of correcting a child, but it makes sense compared to say like taking the shortcut, taking the convenient way of feeding them one of these five lies.
Exactly. And you see, the second lie that I haven't brought up is lie one is I'm responsible for you. Lie two is it's your responsibility to take care of how I feel and how I behave.
Mm-hmm.
So when you don't take care of me, see, I'm going to be annoyed
Mm-hmm.
because you haven't taken care of me.
Right.
Or in abusive relationships, verbal or physical, people will say, well, I wouldn't have gotten so mad if you'd had dinner on the table on time.
Right.
I wouldn't have gotten so angry if you'd just been honest with me in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, holding somebody else responsible for controlling my anger. That's myth two. You're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to control my anger and my happiness.
Right.
And so when couples come into me or someone comes into me and they're trying to decide if they want to get a divorce or not,
Right.
um, I will say, let's put that decision on hold because you're not clear about that. And let's spend the next number of sessions just getting you happy
Mm-hmm.
because you are responsible for the meat and potatoes of your life and your partner is just dessert.
Mm-hmm.
But in myth two, I hold you responsible for my happiness.
Right.
And I have to leave you because you are making me so unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not uncommon when people find a way to make themselves happy themselves, they can evaluate, does this relationship enhance my life or not?
Mm-hmm.
And they're not leaving in victim of, I can't take this anymore. This is so awful. I have to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Leaving in powerlessness instead of power.
Right.
Does this make sense, Alex?
Yeah. Yeah. It does. I mean, these five myths occurs to me from what you tell me. It's this. These are disempowering, conversations, contexts, and there's got to be a better way.
Well said. You're absolutely right. All five of these are disempowering. That's a nice summary. And that's why when you start to heal those myths, one of my clients said the other day when he spoke his truth with graciousness, which is really scary to do
Mm-hmm.
because you're afraid of rejection, he said,
Mm-hmm.
Nancy, I felt so free. I felt so free. I said it nicely. I said it kindly. I said it directly. And I felt so free. And I said, yeah, that's what you gain when you give up the lies. You gain freedom
Mm-hmm.
and you acquire joy.
Mm,
Yeah.
nice. All
Yeah.
right. Cool. So, Nancy, I'm sure there are a lot of folks out there who are rather surprised that they are everyday narcissists. I mean, me for
Yeah.
one, yeah, and human nature being what it is, some will deny that they have it. What can you
Yeah.
say to those who would struggle to accept this realization?
Well, I think it's hard to just accept it without at least reading the first part of the book.
Right.
And denial is a survival technique.
Yes, it is.
And so I've often thought it would be interesting to write a book on denial because so much of us live in denial, whether it's denying how our job is affecting us and making us unhappy, or a relationship, or where we live. The ability to deny is just phenomenal. When I work with abused women, um, in order to stay where they're being treated so cruelly, or
Right.
men,
Right.
they have to lie to themselves about it's not that bad.
Mm-hmm.
He or she didn't mean to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's another really good person in there. This isn't who he or she really is.
Mm-hmm.
Our ability to deny. So I would say it is challenging for us to accept um, those narcissistic traits. However, I'm trying to debunk the idea that narcissism makes people awful.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that. I think narcissism is a state of wounding.
Mm-hmm.
It would be like saying incest survivors are awful people.
Mm-hmm.
They're truly childhood victims. And when we are taught EN, we are victimized as well because we're powerless to stop it or figure it out for ourselves. So I'm trying to take away the nastiness of that word and bring compassion and caring to it.
Right, right. Okay. So, Nancy, in the last minute or so of this interview, are there any last words of wisdom you'd like to share to inspire our listeners?
Yes, there'd be a couple. One is we've learned not to trust ourselves by learning these five myths.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, that wisdom within us will guide us if we learn to trust that wisdom that tells us, I don't like this, I don't want this,
Mm-hmm.
this doesn't feel good.
Right.
Secondly, I want people to understand that they are valuable just as they are. They are worthwhile, likable, and lovable just as they are. They don't have to take care of all these people, they don't have to please all these people.
Right.
Their true friends will hang around.
Mm-hmm.
Their true friends will hang around as they start speaking their truth. And that all these wounds can be healed. That's the most joyous part,
Mm-hmm.
is all these wounds can be healed and you can live a much happier life.
Nice, nice, cool. Okay, so great words of wisdom right there. So, in closing, then, the book is Everyday Narcissism, yours, mine, and ours. The author's our guest, Nancy Van Dyken, and you can find her book on Amazon as well as on other websites such as Barnes& and Noble. So, Nancy, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for being an author story. It was very insightful having you with us today.
Thank you for having me, Alex.
You're welcome. So, everyone, I invite you to go ahead and check out Everyday Narcissism, which you can do so through the Amazon link in the description below. And if you'd like to follow our author interviews on YouTube, feel free to subscribe to our channel. So long for now, everyone. I'll be back on Author Story next time with another inspiring author.